The room broke for a hurried lunch, then filed back in for the first defendant of the afternoon, the birthday lady. Joselle Holliday. Basking in the resonance of her earlier performance, she raised her head high before the judge. Your Honor, Miss Holliday was cited for driving 74 miles per hour in a 65 zone, reported Weeks. Her record is clean, and this is a relatively modest violation. I suggest we knock this down to crossing solid pavement markings, fine $85. I think that is well in order, Mr. Weeks, the judge responded, especially on Miss Holliday's birthday. Here's your first gift of the day from the town of Woonsocket, Miss Holliday. How do you plead? She weighed her thoughts. I got to turn this over in my mind, Judge. What am I guilty of? I didn't do nothing wrong. Go less than 70 on Highway 64 and you're taking your life in your hands. I mean, it's more dangerous to obey the law there. The judge stared at her as if trying to decipher a work of cryptic modern art. For a moment, he was speechless. Crossing solid pavement markings, what's that supposed to mean anyway? She continued. You saying it's right to plead guilty to something you didn't do, Judge? Let me sit down and think on this a bit. Idiot, thought Sonny. A multicultural procession ensued. A scruffy young East European, a lean West Indian in Tim Duncan jersey, a few locals, a dour Asian gentleman in suit and tie. Sonny envisioned flies snagged on fly paper while whizzing past Woonsocket. Many of these folks never would have known the name of the town if they hadn't been forced to come back. Guilty, guilty, guilty. All giddily declared their guilt while watching their fines get lopped in half. The payment line backed up to the door as Mrs. Hazelton's printer spat out receipts. Holy shit, they're totally cleaning up. What do they do with all that cash? Sure as hell ain't going into infrastructure. Anthony Babbitt, Grafton called. Sonny heard wheezing and nervous fumbling from several rows behind. It was Tourette's. Mr. Babbitt, Weeks began before pausing to study the paperwork for a solid 90 seconds. Your Honor, a brief conference, please. The judge beckoned him forward, and the pair conferred in whispers. Finally, Grafton addressed the defendant. Mr. Babbitt, it's come to our attention that there are extenuating circumstances surrounding the incident that brought you here. More civil communication may have saved you a trip here today, sir, but never mind. The scales of justice do not balance on manners. Nonetheless, it may be a bit complicated to sort out. Would you please accompany the bailiff to the waiting room? The little man's eyes darted nervously from right to left. Why? I'm gonna... Panicky and disoriented, he trailed off into mumbles. Don't worry about a thing, Mr. Babbitt, soothed the judge. It's just a more involved set of questions we must go over with you and can't hold up these other folks in the meantime. Relax, I think you'll be satisfied with the outcome. Babbitt appeared unmollified. Sonny felt sorry for his de facto ally. The bailiff took Babbitt's forearm gingerly and guided him out of the courtroom. Face pinched with culpability, he emitted a series of staccato moans recalling the squeal of rusty machinery. So long, Tourette's. Must have pissed off a cop somewhere along the way. What the hell did you do? Following Babbitt out the door, Sonny's eyes peripherally scanned the room. The jury box was empty. The folding chair population had thinned out. His eyes crinkled with frustration at the wall clock face. 4:30. The afternoon was gone. He'd been unlucky. James Pilston, simply grateful for the end of the wait. Each summoned defender now scurried to the podium as if called from the audience to play a TV game show. Sonny blanched with the calling of each name not his own. Why not me? The last kid chosen. Day is done. God damn it. Another half hour ticked by. There were still a handful of people, Sonny among them. Before the next name could be called, the birthday lady rose from her seat. Ms. Holliday, you're back, greeted the judge. What's it gonna be? Will you plead to the lesser charge? She paused theatrically. What the hell? It's my birthday. The dwindling crowd laughed heartily, including the courtroom personnel. Sonny scowled. This performer comes in with no respect, works the room like it's her sitcom and we're all extras, thumbs her nose at the judge, changes her mind, absolves herself with some inane line, and now she's the queen of comedy. He wasn't sure which annoyed him more, her narcissism or the court falling for the act. What bothered him deeper was knowing he could never assert himself like that. He was too timid, too reluctant to rock the boat, and, God forbid, prolong things. "I'm pleased with your decision, Ms. Holliday," said the judge. "Thank you for helping us help you." "I'm getting out the checkbook, Judge. Must be here somewhere." She sashayed to the pay line, eliciting further titters. Guilty and paid, guilty and paid. The show was winding down. Sonny felt the court staff relaxing as the workday neared its end. Finally, he stood and raised his hand. "Your Honor, I was called to court today and have been here since 10. Is it possible my name may have been missed?" "Well, what is your name, Mr. Crow, sir? Orson Crow." Grafton flipped through a stack of index cards. "Mr. Crow, we called your name hours ago, near the beginning of the proceeding. You did not respond and were marked absent." Sonny suppressed irritation. "Obviously a misunderstanding, Your Honor. It was a little tough to hear in the back of the room." Chin in hand, Weeks studied Sonny. He did not look eager to return to work. "Madge already took the files for MIAs back to the file room, sir," he informed Grafton. "She'd have to go back." "With all due respect, sir," Sonny interrupted, "I came up from the city today in good faith to resolve my find. I've been listening intently all day and must have been unable to hear when you called me. It would be tremendously hard on my job situation if I had to take another day off to come back. Would it be possible to squeeze this in here at the end of the day?" Weeks's eyes bore into Grafton, imploring the judge to hold ground. "I'm sorry, Mr. Crow, but it is your responsibility to be attentive in this court. If you do not respond when called, then technically you are absent, whether you are physically in the room or not. I'm afraid you will have to return on another day. Absenteeism also incurs a fine. If you would like to receive that paperwork now rather than wait for it in the mail, please step forward to Mrs. Hazelton." Clouds of protest swirled in Sonny's head, threatening to burst in a storm of invective. He felt wobbly as waves of indignation rolled through his cranium. The diplomatic editor in his head flipped off. "Sir," he began quietly, "I drove 2 hours this morning to get here. I sat straining to hear you all day. I've been following everything, worrying all day about this very situation, not being called. I cooperated, did not ask for special treatment like that lady with the birthday. You may not realize you have a very quiet voice. This courtroom could really use a microphone, a PA system. Have you considered investing in one? The cost of the whole system would be just a drop in the bucket of the cash you took in today." Several jaws dropped. Weeks studied Sonny with bemusement. His eyes kept flitting to Grafton, awaiting a response. A faint smile curled the corners of Mrs. Hazelton's mouth. She stared ahead, feigning disengagement. "As much as we appreciate your advice on how to conduct the affairs of this court, Mr. Crow, the fact remains you were non-compliant with today's instructions. As much as you may wish to blame others, no one here is responsible for holding your apparently limited attention span. You cannot shift fault elsewhere. Please arrange a return date with Mrs. Hazelton before your departure." Grafton reached for his gavel, unused until now, to signal completion of the day's transactions. "No!" Sonny could feel gray matter dissolving in his skull. "I never should have been here in the first place. The charge is petty. You guys are running a business here, I understand that. It's one thing to nail people for breaking rules they've never heard of, to extort them for outrageous sums, to coerce them into giving in with big, wet smiles on their faces. But it's another when you stick it to them twice because of your own ineptitude." The verbal diarrhea wouldn't stop. "Nice little racket you people have going here. Kangaroo court. Some of us have lives." Bailiff, interrupted the judge, it seems Mr. Crow wants to spend some extra time with us. Please oblige him by escorting him to the county lockup. Now. Mr. Crow, he continued, it appears you don't think much of our town or our laws. Clearly you would rather be somewhere else, but I believe a little more time here will do you a world of good. Maybe you'll learn some respect. I see dozens of city fellas like you every week, Mr. Crow. Perhaps we can help you slow down a bit, and I don't mean behind the wheel. You shall be released in the morning and will be required to return at a later date. I hope it won't be too inconvenient for you. The gavel finally came down. The bailiff grabbed Sonny's wrist with greater force than he dared use with the foreboding monk earlier in the day. There was no whimsy on his face as he guided Sonny out. Come see us again soon, Mr. Crow, Grafton called icily to his back. Sonny's mind burned. He knew he was a condescending bastard. Now these bumpkins knew as well. Just outside the courtroom door, the bailiff applied a handcuff to Sonny's left wrist. Procedure, he grunted, and led Sonny past the room where a handful of defendants were still awaiting disposition of their cases. Among them was Tourette's, whose eyes widened with astonishment. Who was a criminal? Who was a madman? Fuck, he mouthed. You've got that right, thought Sonny. Fuck.